All right, divorce court in the Western world is heavily weighted in favor of the women. Now, this is something that it seems like a lot of people don't take that seriously. They think that, oh, look, if you want to go abroad and get divorced, or this is a red pill thing, or this is just conspiracy theory. It's not. Uh, it is a absolute nightmare for a man living in Western society, United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, England, anywhere in Britain, even France, Germany. Uh, the court system, the family court, uh, is effectively rigged, and it is discriminating against men, and it is also affecting the geopolitical survival of the West, because a lot of the best and the brightest and the wealthiest, therefore, Western men are leaving. Now, let me give you guys an example of why. And I'm not saying you shouldn't get married in the West. I'm just saying that if you were to get married in the West, you will lose. The only way you will win is if you stay with your wife forever and she is just awesome. She is a nice person that will treat you well forever and never leave you. But if she has a change of heart, she has some friends that want to manipulate her, she decides to have some sort of a mental breakdown and take it out on you, you have to suffer the consequences, and she will never be held responsible for her actions. You will be. And everything that you love, everything that you have earned, will be on the line. Now, let me give you guys an example. So, uh, my father actually had a. He separated with his ex wife back in 2015. And what he did, because he's not functioning that well mentally, uh, he separated up the goods with her, and he gave her cash, he gave her assets, he gave her a contract for. The contract was for an off the plan apartment. He gave her a whole bunch of other assets, and he continued to give her money after the separation. And he thought that that was going to be okay, that was enough. But what she did was she obviously spoke to a lawyer, and the lawyer went through the assets, and some of the assets. My father had a great deal with my grandparents that he could live in that house indefinitely and raise his family, and all he had to do was pay all the bills. He never had to pay rent, anything. My grandparents were legends in that way, where they cared about their children. Now, he took advantage of that awesome deal and he moved his family in. And what happened was, she, back in 2015, obviously decided, I'm going to see a lawyer and see what I can get. And they discovered that she couldn't take the house because it wasn't in his name, and he didn't have it because my grandmother was still alive. So she decided to wait almost 8 years. Just wait it out. Wait as long as it took to wait until my grandmother, the last parent to die, and then wait for the assets, houses, units, all to be transferred into the name of my father before lodging the divorce proceedings. And because my father's not quite functioning too well, he drinks a little bit, he got sideblinded by this. He didn't think that that was possible, and logically, you would think that it's not possible. You would think, okay, separation happened almost a decade ago. You can't lodge court proceedings now, can you? Well, you can. Now, if someone, in almost every type of law, there is a time limit before you can lodge it. But when it comes to women, it's unlimited. So you can divorce a woman 100 years ago and she can lodge court proceedings today and take everything that you have. It's the same as with sexual assault and rape allegations and everything else. 20 years later, you can be sidelined by something that you allegedly did even 50 years ago. But if someone was to assault you, you would have a time limit. If someone was to steal something, you would have some sort of a civil case. There would be a time limit for you to take action. When you separate almost a decade ago and she waits out the death of your parents so that she can get her hands on your assets, that's one example of how the family court and the divorce court in the Western world is so heavily rigged in favor of the women. Think about it. If you've survived quite well for almost a decade, why do you need any money now? If you divorced a long time ago, shouldn't you be fine now? What have you earned in the last decade? But as a woman, you are above the law. You are above any sort of rationality, and the court system will always back you, even if you're nefariously trying to get your hands on your ex-husband's assets a decade after you actually separated. That's just one example of the moral hazard that women have in their power, and power goes to their brains, and it doesn't. And this is another thing. She could be an immigrant from overseas and just play the court system against a white man in America or Australia or England and take everything from him. And you wonder why the West is collapsing. It's because the men that hold the countries in the West on their shoulders are being exploited and destroyed within their countries. The court systems are also being used as a geopolitical play to destroy the West. So the smart men don't just learn from their own mistakes, they learn from other men's mistakes. And so what you have is some of the brightest men worldwide not getting married, not having to deal with the divorce court because they know it's rigged, so they avoid it at all costs, and a lot of them are going abroad, and that's why middle powers are rising, because there's capital flight, intellectual human capital flight leaving the West, and this is what happened to Argentina. So if you're a man living in a Western society, if you're a white man, you've got nowhere to go. If you're an Asian man, you can go back to your country and find a wife there where the laws are going to be fairer. If you're from anywhere else, you can go back to wherever that is and find a wife in whatever your home country is before you immigrated. Even though you were born in the West, your parents probably came from there as well. So it's not necessarily my advice not to get married, but there is a high amount of risk involved, and you are more likely to lose than anything else. Also, I had a guy reach out to me and ask me that very question. What countries do you recommend, and how should I go about finding a wife abroad to have kids? Because it's the only way to secure your interests, because you don't have any interests as a man in the West. Think about that. And even the fact that I'm out here talking and advising men, you can be discriminated against. I've been discriminated against on this channel quite a few times, where I just say, hey, look, we need to avoid these pitfalls. And you have all these women in the comments saying, no, you don't have any rights to choose. You're sheep, you're cattle, you don't have any rights, you're nothing. You don't have the right to choose. You have to take what you're given like a slave. And then what you do is you go abroad. If you're worldly like myself and you have connections worldwide and you can speak to men worldwide and you can travel, you will see that men worldwide have more options. If you've got more options, exercise that right, especially in the West, before it's taken away. Because from here on, the only way is down. The West is not going to survive this. The same way Argentina didn't survive the exploitation of men. It collapsed. That's just a recent example of what happens. So anyway, see you guys in the next video.